is so much fun to be able to do that and not have to fight Kevin for it. Hey, my name is Marc Bernardin. Welcome to Black Man Beyond. Episode 2, Electric Boogaloo. Here at the shiny-ass Scum and Villainy Cantina for a nice intimate discussion about things that go bump in the night. How's everybody doing tonight? So good? Are you sure? Like, so good or just fine? I'm really good, man. Thank you. I appreciate you asking. That's very sweet of you. You were raised well. I have 3 amazing co-hosts who are waiting in the wings, who will be out very shortly. But first, because it's almost Halloween, and clearly most of you are at a Halloween party, if you're not here, which is fine, because we're going to be a little scary. I wanted to talk about the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, because it feels like it's a good thing to talk about a couple days before Halloween. When I was young, and I know it's hard to believe that was a time ago, but when I was like 20 years old, my best friend was a guy named Nick. Nick is Greek from Long Island, New York. Very sweet guy. Also the guy that you would, like, whenever I was making short films in high school, I'd be like, you know what I could really use? An ice cream truck. How do I get an ice cream truck? And I'd be like, Nick would be like, yeah, no, I got one. Just give me a second. I'll bring you an ice cream truck. When do you need it? Like Sunday afternoon? No problem. Nick was the guy who could find anything, anywhere, anytime. So Nick and I were both Boy Scouts. He far longer than I. I bounced out of the Boy Scouts relatively young because I thought the awesomest thing to do would be to bring like Playboy magazines to Boy Scout camp. And it turns out that they frown on that for reasons I don't understand, because it felt like the best idea to me. But Nick was like an Eagle Scout. Like, Nick went all the fucking way. But we both liked to go camping, and camping was cool. Like, we lived in New York, and so within an hour you could be up in the Adirondacks, and it was gorgeous, and fall, and the leaves are changing. And so I was like 20. Nick is a couple years old. He's like 22. I was in my last year of college. He had already graduated, and he was going to be a private investigator, was his dream. He got his law degree, and he had a gun license. Like, he was that guy, 22 years old, who was like a license to carry, which seems like a bad idea, even in 1994, this must have been. So we get in his car, we just fucking start driving up into the woods in the middle of nowhere, because that's the best camp. You don't want to go to a campsite, that's regulated, and regulation is bullshit. So we just pulled off the side of this road in the middle of nowhere, and I was driving this Volkswagen GTI. I felt all fucking cute in my little Volkswagen. And I pull off on the side of the road, and we're like, all right, let's set up a tent, and we'll light a fire, and we'll start toasting marshmallows, and you know, we brought Chef Boyardee in cans, and you just put the can on the fire, and you give it like 10 minutes, and it's hot, and that's all you need it to be. And like roasting hot dogs and shit, and then, you know, sun goes down, and we're just fucking hanging out. And we're about to go to sleep. It must have been like 10 o'clock at night. And we had both, like, I am not like an experienced woodsman. Nick is. He grew up upstate. Like, his family had a house up there, so he's all about that woods life. But, you know, and I had been camping just enough to not be like afraid of the woods. But we both heard this blood-curdling scream, like top of the lungs, someplace not very far away, just full on, like out of a horror movie, some woman screaming her fucking head off. And we look at each other, and we're like, you heard that, right? Yeah. That was real though, right? I think so. Where the fuck are we? I'm not sure. So Nick gets his pistol, and he hands me the shotgun. I mean, already the best idea ever, right? So he hands me the shotgun, and we're standing there like, hello? Hey, anybody out there? Nothing. Another fucking scream, right? And then we start to hear like footsteps not that far off, like just like kind of pressing down on branches and leaves and shit. And so I rack the shotgun. And in case you don't know what that sounds like, other than for movies, it is loud as fucking thunder if you're in the middle of nowhere. So just that like, another fucking scream, and then more footsteps. And, like, we are two 20-something people who, like, one of us might have been an athlete at one point, another one of us had a law degree and was going to be a fucking private investigator. And we're like, we need to go, right? Right. Are we going to be heroes today? No. Fuck that. And so, like, I hand him the shotgun, and he's, like, kind of patrolling around the campsite, and I'm trying to break down this fucking tent, and it's not working because you got to do the thing where you pull them apart and then fold it, and I wasn't pulling, I was just folding, and these things, like, snap, and it splinters and pain, and, like, trying to shove this tent and this cooler and into the back of a Volkswagen GTI, which is not really fit for cargo, especially if you don't fold it right, and, like, so I'm cramming this shit in there, and he's watching the car, and I finally get everything in the car, and then Volkswagen GTI is not known for its off-road capabilities, but here we are fucking off-road, and we're in a little bit of panic, and so I get behind the wheel, and I start spinning out, the tires are waving, and I'm like careening off of trees to get out of this weird-ass middle-of-the-woods bullshit, and then we get onto the highway, and we drive like 100 miles an hour to his house, and we get there at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and his parents wake up, who were staying there for a stretch, and like, what happened? And we're like, you know that traditionally we are not like wimps about this, right? Like, we're all good with camping, like it's not a strange thing to us. So why are you here? Because we heard some shit in the woods, and it wasn't cool. But do you think it was real? Yes. Are you making pancakes now? Because I would really like some pancakes to settle my nerves. That was the last time I went camping. And that is now like 20 years ago. And I think about it every Halloween of the thing that I will never do because fuck the woods. Bad things happen there. So yeah, that's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Thanks, Nate. Tonight's going to be a little bit different as far as Fat Man Beyond goes, / Black Man Beyond. We are not going to be so much about the news tonight, though there is one news story that we are going to talk about because damn. But to do so, I'm going to call up my guest hosts. First, I would like to welcome to the stage Latoya Morgan. Latoya is a screenwriter and television producer of great renown. She is responsible for things like Turn, Washington Spies, Into the Badlands, and a couple episodes of The Walking Dead, and for making AMC a better place by being there.
I do what I can.
You do what you can. Hey, Latoya.
Thank you.
Are we missing a mic, or do we only have 3?
Oh,
you've
there
got
is
it.
one missing.
Okay. Up next, I would like to welcome Clarke Wolfe to the stage.
Woo woo!
Clarke is a horror authority par excellence. She is an actress and a host, and she's currently holding it down at DC Daily. Hey, Clarke. Hi!
I know, it's always like, yeah,
You can
go
be
on
on that side.
Thank you.
And then finally, Jen Yamato, who is a journalist for the Los Angeles Times and a writer of such skill and deftness and emotionality that she makes it hard to be a writer yourself or a journalist, which is why I quit being a journalist, because she's too good at it.
She is very good at it.
She is very good at it. So, hey, Jen.
Oh yeah, the wireless mic.
You get the J-Lo
You
mic.
get the wireless mic.
I got the karaoke mic.
How
You good, you good?
appropriate. Your favorite.
All right, so I think, and my favorite part is that I'm doing this with Clarke, who I met in Romania.
Yes!
The most horrific of places.
Well, it has a history.
It has a history. We were both there on a junket covering Dracula Untold.
Yes.
You don't remember that one, right? No, nobody should. It was relatively shitty.
Yeah.
It was the first stab that Universal made at like
Stab.
rebooting their, I know, see what I did there? At rebooting their monster franchise, and it didn't work because they would then put that shit to bed for a couple of years, and then The Mummy, which didn't work, and then they put that shit to bed for a couple of years.
Sofia Boutella was a wonderful mummy. I really liked her as the mummy. That movie is nonsense, but she's great.
She's
right?
the best thing about it.
Hands down.
Hands down.
Wait, I have a question regarding your origin story of your friendship.
Yes.
What did you observe on set? Do you even remember?
Well,
It wasn't even set. It was a video junket.
Blu-ray junket, home video. But so this was amazing. So, okay, Dracula Untold, not great. Admittedly. It did make money though, so we got to go on this trip, and I will say one of the cool things they did was, even though it is totally factually inaccurate, they tried to blend Vlad the Impaler and that with the Dracula mythology that we kind of know, so that's weird because it doesn't involve Vlad at all, like the real Dracula book. But we got to tour Romania and see all of these historical locations that Vlad lived and ruled. We went to the monastery where his headless body was delivered. Like, it was, for me, Marc was probably like, did not enjoy this, but I was in heaven because it was the most grand, fabulous, historical thing that I would have always wanted to do, but would have never been able to do.
It was super metal.
Oh.
And the best part was they didn't shoot the movie in Romania.
No.
They shot it in like Ireland.
No, yeah, not.
But they still took us to fucking Romania to show us shit that's not in the movie.
It was awesome.
For reasons.
It was great. I liked all of those reasons because I got to go there.
If you ask me, the reason that movie exists was so we could be standing right here today.
Absolutely.
I like that idea.
I know. My favorite part was that I went there. I was working for Playboy at the time, and I went with the idea that like I'd do this fucking junket and I'd write about the experience of the junket, that I'd interview one of the actors in the movie at the end of it. And one of the actors, I won't name who it was, but it wasn't the star. I'm not going to name the name. But one of the actors was like, I don't want to talk to Playboy. And I was like, I
don't know
I
this
wonder
story.
why. And the publicist was like, yeah, he doesn't feel comfortable talking to Playboy. So if you don't have to do the interview. You just got a free vacation in Romania. And I was like, are you sure though? Because this wasn't cheap. And later on, I would come to the conclusion that said actor was closeted and thought that talking to Playboy would in some fashion out him to the world. Like I give a fuck. But even if you wanted to lie about it, the people you lie to are Playboy. Like if you want to pretend that you're like, you know what I really love? The ladies. Boy, do I ever. The lie you tell to sell that is fucking Playboy. But
Did you notice how in the movie they do not become vampires by biting each other? Because I definitely noticed that.
we don't do that here.
Yeah, I just thought it was very interesting. I think it's like they cut themselves and they feed you their blood or something, but there's no physical contact between future vampires.
Harsh language.
So weird.
What did you say?
Harsh language.
And rice style.
rice
Great.
style.
Yes.
So I guess we should start our little baby news bit, which is in case anybody was on Twitter this weekend. There was a sort of live stream of the Austin Film Festival, where the two guys who made Game of Thrones, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, were sort of doing this victory lap of like, hey, we made Game of Thrones. That was awesome, right? Let's tell you how that happened. And then they proceeded to tell everything that they did wrong over the course of making this show, which is like, we didn't read the books, we just pitched the pilot. We didn't want to understand how the characters worked. We're not about that. We made a pilot that was like half as long as it should have been and awful and didn't get fired, and then they just gave us more money to reshoot the pilot. We don't know how to write for characters, so the actors pretty much did most of that work. We don't know how to interface with our sort of production head, so like costuming, don't know how that works either. Basically, it was a litany of we either didn't know, learning on the job, didn't care, and somehow had a hit show and somehow never got fired. So it was this weird like flex of privilege that seems odd given that like, dude, you got an Emmy for best fucking drama.
Right.
Like, you could have just never told anybody that you pulled the heist of the century and just gotten off scot-free. But instead, they decided to say, here's how we fooled you. It's like the end of Clue, right? Like, maybe it happened like this. And another fucking way that they kind of pull the wool over everybody's eyes, including themselves. How did you guys react? Because I know...
Wait, but Marc, that's not the news.
Well, no, I want to really get to the second part of the news, which is delicious. But like, I know that every screenwriter that I know, especially every TV writer that I know, who has been trying their best to sell a fucking TV show, and the response is always, man, you got to have more experience. Like, we're just not sure we can trust you with this show. You've never run a show before. Despite having produced hundreds of hours of television, we're just not sure you're ready. Every one of those people is like, have you seen these motherfuckers who admittedly didn't know how to do a TV show?
I really want to hear what Latoya has to say about this.
The thing that got me about it, and no one is trying to say you shouldn't be allowed to learn on the job. I think the term that they used was film school. They got to use Game of Thrones as their film school. But that opportunity is definitely not given to people who look like me. So that's the problem that I have with it. If it was egalitarian and everybody got a chance to fuck up and make mistakes and even get a shot to do this, because I can't even tell you how many meetings I've had where I've left like enraged because all I'm trying to do is get that first show on the air, and it's just super hard for people who look like me. Yes.
Yeah.
I think too, just all I want to say, all I want to contribute is like, I think all of that is so shitty. And then on top of it, appearing to not have the humility to be like, boy, we were lucky.
Yeah.
Boy, like, we did all this stuff and the learning on the job stuff and like all of this, and boy, this is how we got better. This is how we, like, when we were so grateful for the energy off of it was like, yeah, isn't that weird how that happened?
Like, woo!
You're just like, wait, what? Like,
And it got really hard to the point where we just didn't want to do it anymore, so we kind of just gave up.
I think that was the bad part, or I'm sorry, not the bad part, but like the extra not great.
Yeah, no, it was the Susan at the end. Yeah. It was the bad finish off of a glass of wine that already tastes like shit. But it was very much like, we don't understand the privilege that we had and don't have any perspective on it whatsoever. How do you feel about it, Jen?
Objectively,
as a journalist,
I agree. I mean, it's such a bad look.
Yeah.
And I think when you are two of now the highest paid creators in Hollywood with very high profile, multi-bajillion dollar deals, I think a little bit more awareness is in order. But also, I think it's illuminating, and illuminating moments like that have the ability to shine a light and start conversations in the community. And I think that's actually a great thing, is that now, like, the industry can be like, let's not do that.
See, but are they gonna say let's not do that? Because one of the things that also happened too, because I'm on Twitter way too much, which is bad. But there was this weird kind of like backlash almost, where people were saying like, "Oh, you're just so jealous of them because now they're just laughing their way to the bank." And I'm like, you're missing the point entirely. Like, no one is. Of course, please give me 9 figures. Thank you. I'll take it.
There's a big leave Britney alone.
Yes, it was like, leave them alone.
They tried so hard.
I'm like, but they kind of said they didn't try. Like, no one told them to say this. They said it themselves. And I'm like, so you kind of like, it was a weird self-own. It was kind of odd.
I do wonder, though, if people would be less mad at it if more people loved how the show ended.
Yes.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah. I mean, and like HBO does that. Like, they give their creators an incredibly long leash. And most of the time it pays out for them. Like, Watchmen was an incredibly long production process, years long, of being in the room, and the amount of resources and length of rope that they gave to Damon Lindelof to do that is unlike you would get anyplace else. Then again, Damon Lindelof had already come off of Lost, had come off of Leftovers for them, which did very well. So that length of rope is somewhat warranted. It's still anomalous in television to get a couple of years to produce 9 episodes of TV.
To get 1 episode of television is very, very hard.
Totally.
I think that's the thing that was missing from the conversation that was online. people were missing the part that it is very, very hard to get one episode, let alone a season of television, and then another season.
Or could you imagine getting to do your pilot over?
Exactly.
And not be removed or be
Yeah.
assigned. We were talking about this at dinner, like not being assigned somebody who's like, okay, hey, this is a veteran showrunner. Like this is somebody who knows how to deal with big budgets, big productions. They're gonna come on, for this, because clearly the pilot was a miss.
Yep.
That we have to just scrap all of that.
Yep.
Like that's nuts.
I have now been on 2 television shows where the executive producer has been relieved of his duties somewhere between production and post-production.
And that's very common. To
And
stay with it after in 2 different incarnations is very rare.
Totally. And and those were experienced producers who had done like hours and hours and hours of television. It just wasn't working, and they got fired for it, or asked to leave, or creative differences, or whatever version of that story you want to hear. For those guys to like not even get like, hey, can you actually do this? Yeah, we got this. It's fine. We just need like $100 million more. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all right in our book. Go ahead, make us a show. Just not as shitty as that one. That's what it's not what they did. It's what they were allowed to do. Is sort of my issue with it. Hey Jen, what was the follow-up news to this?
Ooh, yeah.
Something about Space Wars?
Yeah,
A Star Wars?
a Star Wars. So if you'll remember, viewers, about 2 years ago, D.B. Weiss and Benioff, David Benioff, were granted a trilogy of Star Wars movies. Kathy Kennedy, sat them down. Was like, hey, you know what? We like the cut of your jib. Game of Thrones is really good. You guys have a trilogy. That's when she was handing out trilogies like there was candy at Halloween. Like, you get a trilogy, and you get a trilogy. Are you white with a beard? Then you get a trilogy. And so yes, it is probably not a causal relationship. It happens to be concurrent, maybe. But the day after this Twitter thread kind of blew up, it was announced that these 2 guys are not doing a Star Wars trilogy anymore.
What if that was a coincidence?
Just like, it's been in the works for like 8 months,
they had
guys.
the press release ready to go, like push send, and then it just so happened to come. That would be the worst coincidence
They had
ever.
already sent it to all the press. Be like, listen, you can first thing Monday morning. We
Embargo
want this to drop.
lifts.
And then like, did you see we can't stop it. We can't put this genie back in the bottle. And so claiming that because they signed a $250 million deal with Netflix to create TV shows for them, they were too busy to then do Star Wars, which is okay, sure, because I thought money bought you time.
I'd be pretty busy.
They were too busy to do the last season of Game of Thrones.
Oh!
I'm sorry. I'm salty.
Oh, man.
I'm salty about
Wait,
that.
I said it was for another podcast.
Shots fired.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm done.
You guys.
I'm sorry.
Shots fired.
But yes, they are no longer doing a Star War or 3 Star War.
Were you excited about the potential their Star Wars is?
Well, I mean,
Tell the truth.
I felt this way. Like, I loved Game of Thrones. Like, the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, first 4 are magical, the 5th is really good, and then things
But how
happen.
many seasons are there of a Game of Thrones?
8.
There you go.
8.
you go.
But even still, I was like, you know what? Those guys, independent of anything else, I see how that choice makes sense. Right? Like,
Sure.
They told long form story. They understood, as far as we knew, character. They understood the emotional twists. Like, yeah, fuck it, give it to those guys. In the same way that giving it to JJ made sense. That giving it to like Miller and Lord in the moment makes sense. Like, those fucking guys, super smart. I love the 21 Jump Street movies. Yeah, give them a movie. Josh Trank, less so. Ryan Johnson, sure, like I get that. Like Brick is great. Looper made a lot of money. It's really smart. You like science fiction? Give him a movie. All of those things discreetly in and of themselves make sense. The massive collection of that much bearded white dude became like okay.
Did you just call it a collection?
You go,
Yeah.
you gotta catch them all. But like, is there nobody else who wants to tell a story in this world? Is there nobody else who's got a Star Wars story in them? Are there no women? Are there no people of color? Are there no women
they don't
of color?
exist. What are you talking about?
There are no black nerd
There's
ladies.
none.
No.
No.
How did you even get in here?
I know. How did you let me in?
How'd you? We let you out.
Exactly.
So like, I was like, oh yeah, sure, I can see what that movies would look like. They're good at long form stories. Let's do this. But it's like, lots of these decisions just didn't seem to pan out the way that I think Kathy Kennedy might have wanted them to. Not that I think that she gets fired over this, because she's only really made one giant mistake, and that was Solo. That's the one that cost them money. That's the one that cost them, they had to reshoot the movie at greatly spared no expense, reshooting the movie, because she hired the wrong people to do it. And then she hired Ron Howard, who was fine, like aggressively fine. Like the movie is emphatically okay. But that is her one big mistake. And it still made money. It didn't lose money. It just wasn't the hit they wanted it to be.
And I would argue, too, that in theory, Miller and Lord for Solo was brilliant.
Oh,
I would watch that.
I would still watch that.
I know. If somebody can find that cut, because I'm sure there's a Miller and Lord cut somewhere.
Like, I will say that was the move. That was the one I was most excited about, truly, because I was like, this is the type of energy and this character that I want to see that energy applied. Like, this makes perfect sense to me. And then...
And inventiveness and nerdery.
And then I did not get to see that movie.
Yeah. But so, it's just like... I want Kathy Kennedy to widen her gaze a little bit. And I don't think she gets fired. I don't think she gets replaced. I don't know the person who could do that.
There's no world where she gets fired, ever. She's been with that company for like a million years.
Yeah.
There's no way.
But yeah, it all held promise until it didn't. And it just feels as if maybe going outside of the box that Star Wars seems to have built itself since 1977, which is you got to have a beard to make one of these things. I think Maureen Ryan, which at the time she was at the Tribune maybe, had grinded down the stats, and of all of the people who had ever made a Star Wars movie above the line, there's one woman. In 35 years, Lee Brackett, who co-wrote Empire Strikes Back, is the only woman who's ever had anything to do with a Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. And like, that says something.
Do you think Lucasfilm would make the adaptation of the George Lucas story where we find out how much his wife contributed to the Star Wars franchise? I'd like to see that movie.
Talking about his first wife, though, right?
Marshall Lucas, the Marshall Lucas story.
I don't think that Lucasfilm's going to make that movie.
Somebody else could, though.
Yeah. Anyone listening?
Yeah. I bet somebody wrote a book about her, right? You can buy the rest of that book.
We've cracked it.
Take it to Fox. They'll make it. Oh, damn.
We'll get to that.
All right. So that's the news that we're going to cover this week, which isn't a ton, but it is juicy and delicious. So let's talk about horror.
Scary
I
things.
am a wimp. I do not cotton with horror very much.
Was this always the case, Marc?
It wasn't always the case. Like growing up in the 80s, it was easier to be a horror fan, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Only in that, there was so much of it. Most of it discovered on video, on VHS, as one does. But also the kinds of horror you got were both wildly different, and none of it seemed like it was out to punish you in a way that some modern horror felt like it was. There had always been the manipulation. There are going to be jump scares. There's going to be the thing that's a little too gory. But there was always this other sense of we were trying to do more than that, even if we were ultimately going to. It's like the broccoli is the rest of the movie, and the cheese is the jump scares. And together, it's delicious, but like the plot and the character and all of that shit has to work, and we will still give you all of these things you want.
You're saying you feel like that was horror in the 80s?
I feel like that was like 70s, even late 60s, 70s, 80s. And then it for me, I stopped getting enjoyment out of it in like the mid 2000s.
Right, because of the quote fingers torture porn kind of.
What kind of food stuff would you say
good
that
question.
was?
I feel like that stuff is just like Cheetos.
Cheetos are delicious, Marc.
I know, but there's little redeeming value to a Cheeto in the way there was to cheese covered
All right,
broccoli.
I'm struggling with this food analogy.
As am I. I went out on a limb. But yeah, like it turned a corner for me. I think the last couple of horror movies I saw in the theater were The Ring, which I liked.
The original?
Oh, wow.
Not
The
Ringu,
remake?
but yeah, the Gore Verbinski, Naomi Watts movie, and Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. And then I like kind of tried Hostel and was like, no. I saw the trailers for Saw. I was like, fuck you. And then just never really went back. And every now and again, I'll rent something because I keep being told, man, you gotta watch Hereditary. You gotta watch Midsummer. You gotta watch Babadook. And I'm like,
Oh yeah, definitely Babadook though, for sure.
and yet no, I don't.
Yes, you
Turns
do.
out, have to watch any of those.
No,
Just-
Life goes on.
But wait,
So
are you saying you don't like them, or are you saying it's like I'm uncomfortable,
You're
or
scared.
I'm scared.
okay?
But that's
okay.
the point.
I don't wanna
That's
feel-
the point of horror. You're supposed
But
to be
why
scared.
do I want to be scared?
Because it's the same as.
Because it helps you deal with grief and all the things.
Yeah, and it's like that's the same reason I love roller coasters. You go on, it's gonna be scary.
Don't
it's like
love
a
those
great
either.
ride. You're missing out on the great things in life.
Don't
You
love
get to go on a
those
thrill ride. That's what it's for.
You remember that you are alive when you see
Yes.
either. You know, I can do that at
the
like.
fragility of human life on screen.
You know what also achieves that? All you can eat barbecue. It's like,
You like barbecue?
I might die today.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Has
is
all the
movie for
barbecue you need.
And I've seen that one. But it's like, you know what? I could eat myself to death. I'm pushing the edge. I'm living out there, man. This much brisket could kill a man. That's how I live on the edge. So tell me how each of you came to horror. What was the first horror movie you saw and loved?
Ooh, I watched way too many horror movies when I was a kid. My entire family loves horror movies, so this was like my bread and butter. It's the reason why I love Stephen King. The first movie that I think that I saw, like, that we rented, that I was terrified of was Nightmare on Elm Street, and just the idea that you cannot go to sleep, it just messed my brain up. I remember keeping my eyes open, or I tried to, all night, just in case Freddy was like gonna come and jump out. I was terrified, but I remembered more than anything the soundtrack of that movie. It's like, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And I was like, no! Like, that song was stuck in my head, and it stuck with me. And so I just became addicted to horror films. You would think it would have the opposite effect, where I would be like, no, I don't want to see this anymore. I was like, oh, I was totally terrified. Yeah, let's do it again.
All right.
For me, I was definitely like a scared kid for sure. I always was attracted to, dark fantasy. So I loved Tim Burton, and I loved Legend and Labyrinth and Willow and all these like 80s things. And then a babysitter actually showed me the Stephen King's It miniseries when I was like 5, and I was wrecked. And then I was at a friend's house for Halloween when I was about 12, and we watched The Exorcist. And like you were saying with the sound,
Yes.
Latoya, like I covered my eyes, but I could still hear everything, and I had seen enough to where my brain created. I mean, I am not exaggerating when I say I did not sleep for a year after I saw that movie.
As a child, I actually figured out, I think the trick is covering your ears. Because you can close your eyes, but if you can still hear what's happening, your mind fills in the details.
If I could go back and tell 12-year-old Clarke exactly this.
I'm imagining 12-year-old Clarke going, I need more hands! Who can give me hands to cover things?
Oh my God. But yeah, so I was definitely scarred, truly. And what was interesting too was for me, it wasn't like I was brought up Catholic and it was, or, there was any sort of implication there, except that this movie was terrifying.
It really is.
And also, so now as an adult, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think it is absolutely brilliant, and I think it's about so much more than just the scares and the incredible makeups and all of that. But it was in high school when I started, like I took a film class in high school, and I really started going, oh, horror has something to say. And that's when it started, and also because I was less scared, so I could like actually make it through a real scary movie without losing sleep. But yeah, and then in college I studied horror academically, so really focusing on political commentary and horror and science fiction, and which is why I want to talk more about the hostels of it all, but we'll get to that.
I actually had very similar experiences to both of you in that I was a scared kid. Horror movies scared me so badly because I used to watch them with my dad, who would put on the original Halloween, and I could hear the music and just like it would haunt my dreams. My dad loved scaring me. He also loved watching, his favorite comedy show to watch in the 90s was Cops. He thought it was hilarious, so that's like his sense of humor, so he would like enjoy scaring me by putting on scary movies. But also, I was like a very shy fantasy nerd. And so fantasy became an adjacent way in. I read a lot of books about dragons when I was a young girl, by myself.
Shut up.
You know. And as I got older, that morbid fascination, I think, turned into, something more. Like I was more interested in how it works and more interested in watching different kinds of genre stuff. And I never studied horror movies in college, although that sounds awesome.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I have a similar experience to both of you in that I remember watching The Exorcist. I must have been like 16 years old. And I was like, how scary could this movie be? It's as old as I am. And it's like,
Old people aren't scary.
it's like nothing old is good. Like whatever, it's a 16-year-old movie. It's bullshit. And it was like hiding behind a couch for most of it because it's petrifying. And Nightmare on Elm Street is the one that stuck with me the most because it's the thing that I always responded to was less the scares and more the here's why you can't escape it, right?
Yeah.
Like it becomes a not quite plot exercise, but it's the high concept of why is this? Let me find a thing that you can't get rid of that's inherently human that you can't get rid of.
That literally everyone has
everybody does.
Yeah.
You have to sleep.
It's making
sooner or later.
It's making it universal, and so it was always less about here's a slasher who's coming out of this lake and he's going to kill these bunch of kids. That never felt universal to me, despite the fact that I used to camp. But everybody goes to sleep.
Yeah,
you know,
have to.
everybody's got a kid or a sibling who's acting funny. You know, like for that one, it's like, the fuck is wrong with him? I don't know. Could be possessed. Really? I didn't know that was a thing. Son of a... Like, everybody stayed at a hotel that seemed a little dodgy. You know, like, it's finding the specificity and universality, which is a thing that as storytellers we're always looking for, right? Here's the thing that makes it specific, and that specific is the thing that we can all respond to and key ourselves into. And as horror began, at least modern horror for me, never gave me that thing. Mm-hmm. It seemed always about the sensation of you just want to be scared, and people who get pleasure out of that, that's for them. But it never engaged me in a sort of mentally, plot-wise, like there was one level of it that was never working for me.
I think you should watch Hereditary. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Although
did you
Babadook
watch it?
first.
Hereditary's intense.
How dysfunctional was your family?
Yeah.
About as much as anybody's. I've got some unresolved issues with my father.
I think it will terrify you proportionately to how messed up your family is.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay, so we all took it upon ourselves. We wanted to talk about three horror movies that mean things to us, and we wanted to talk about why they mean things to us, why we responded to them over other ones. So Jen, you go first.
Okay.
You wrote. All of these ladies have notes.
Yeah.
That is why they're better than I am.
We are nerds.
I'm just winging it.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Nice. I feel inadequate.
Is that a unicorn?
No.
What's on the front of
Dragons?
It's a bird, okay?
it? Sorry, the wings and the beak threw me.
The fantasy horse equivalent would be a Pegasus. There's a difference.
I'm sorry. My bad.
I wanted to take it back to the old school, older than old school. There's a Japanese movie called Kuroneko, which translates to Black Cat, which is from 1968. And what I find really fascinating about this, which I think is on Criterion, it's like got beautiful, beautiful haunting imagery. It's based on sort of Japanese folklore about two women who are brutally attacked, killed, brought back to life in a way by a black cat that licks at their bodies. And they're brought back as like avenging cat ladies, which is awesome. But also what I find fascinating about that is, fast forward to, oh wait, I guess, not fast forward. You go across the world to 1942, and you have Cat People, produced by Val Lewton. You have Cat People remake, called Cat People, which is a little bit different, changes the story a little bit.
Is that Natasha Kinski? Is she in that one?
That's right, it's a sexy one, with a Giorgio Moroder theme. So good. And then you have, of course, the Halle Berry classic, Catwoman.
And this year, we will get Cats.
Oh.
By the way, I cannot wait for Universal Pictures major motion picture Cats this holiday season.
No thanks.
How scary is that trailer?
I remain unconvinced that that's an actual movie and not just some elaborate prank.
Yes. Do you like how they dropped that one trailer at Comic-Con, and then have you seen anything else from Cats since? No.
Only in my dreams.
Yeah, exactly. In our hearts and in our dreams.
So
I can't wait.
So this thread is like cats are evil, clearly.
Oh, but yeah.
throughout
Well,
time.
I guess where I'm going with this is it's interesting to me how cross cultures and cross generations you can have kind of similar seeds of a story centered around this kind of figure. In all of these stories, they're women who turn into scary cats, but they have their reasons. They have their reasons, and I think I just thought it was kind of interesting to place those all in counterpoint to one another, including Halle Berry's Catwoman, where she was also licked by a bunch of cats and endowed with superpowers of vengeance.
I mean, the math checks out, right? Like,
I'm not saying that as a cat lady, I secretly hope that if this one day I need this to happen, my cat's not going to come do that to me. Like that's why I have a black cat. You know, it's like
just in case.
just in case.
I can't with this one. What? Keep going. The Cat People. I need to see all of these.
Oh,
I've seen none of the cat
Let's have a
incarnations.
Cat People marathon.
Yes, I need the Cat People marathon.
Dear Alamo Draft House, Cat People Marathon.
Leading up to the premiere of Cats.
Oh, brilliant!
Yes.
Promotion.
Okay, that's where I tap out.
Hey, Alamo, yo, I had a great idea. I want all the credit. No. Clarke, tell us a movie. Tell us about a movie.
So for those of you listening and watching, there was a lot of back and forth on this first one. I texted Marc, and then I was like, I'm changing my movie. And then in the back, we were talking about it, and I was like, I'm changing it back. So I'm going to go Poltergeist, the original.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's important to talk about this movie for a lot of reasons. You'll notice that 2 of my 3 choices tonight are rather basic, and I accept that. But I do think that there's something really important in genre and horror specifically that resonates with people, and that has like it's not just horror fans that are into this. Like it definitely touches on something within like the broader picture. And Poltergeist I love for many, many reasons, but the biggest reason for me is JoBeth Williams. Diane Freeling is one of the best characters, best moms in horror movies ever. And I don't mean like, what a good mom. I just mean like, what a fascinating, interesting character. She's a fighter. But what else I love about it is that it's a movie where the mom is at the center of the story. So like if you look at something like, say, Insidious, which I think is kind of like a very loose Poltergeist remake, which I love. I love the first 2, I love a lot of the Insidious movies, but the first 2 are fun for different reasons. But they've essentially switched the roles. So Patrick Wilson becomes like the focal point of the story, whereas if you look at the OG, it actually is Diane. It's Diane. JoBeth is actually billed above Craig T. Nelson, which you never see anymore. Like you never see. I guess when it comes to like a 2-parent household depicted in a movie, it's usually the dad who's like doing the fighting, right? And in this one, they're exploring so much. Like if you pick up on the fact that Diane was 16 when she had her oldest daughter, and now Craig T. Nelson has become this like capitalist, successful guy, and obviously that comes with a horrible, horrible, horrible price. I also think the movie is super heartfelt. I think it is emotional. Like, I think it's an emotional, scary movie, which I think it's hard to do. It's hard to pull off the sincerity of, like, feeling, especially when we're talking about the supernatural. Like, the idea that Diane and the female paranormal investigator have this really beautiful, quiet conversation about what a soul is and what happens when you die and what you believe. It's like, and of course they get scared later, like that happens, but like it's just such a powerful concept to me. I think this movie it stands the test of time. It has a lot to say, and on the lore and legacy of the Tobe Hooper versus the Steven Spielberg of it all, like, I used to go back and forth on what I think as a fan and knowing both of their visual styles, but I know that there are a lot of people, especially since Tobe has passed away, that adamantly say not only did Tobe direct that movie, but like they're kind of furious that some of the cast has let this rumor grow and grow and grow, and so I think it's fair to give Tobe the credit for making the movie. So that's what I think.
Awesome. What you got?
So I should just stay with Nightmare on Elm Street because we talked about it a little bit, but I think my favorite thing about that movie is Nancy, the character of Nancy. Heather Langenkamp is so good. She's like a survivor. She's scared. She has a boyfriend who gets eaten up by a bed. I mean, like, it's just really, really a great journey for her. But my favorite part is that she fights back, right? So she creates all these traps at the end of the movie. She's not just gonna go down like most girls in movies do. She's not gonna become a victim. And I always like that she fought back. I mean, there's really great deaths in Nightmare on Elm Street, so you can't go wrong with that, but that's truly the reason why I like it.
All right. My first pick is a film by Karen Kusama called The Invitation. Woohoo! Which is, it's a small movie. It's a movie that, for her, comes on the heels of having made a giant movie that nobody gave a shit about called Aeon Flux, which was a disaster by any measure in Hollywood. The reviews are bad. It cost a lot of money. It didn't make anything back.
The hair was really good.
The costumes are kind of great, and the hair
Jumpsuits.
was sharp. And Charlize Theron is doing a thing, as she always does. But it landed with a thud, and she got put in director jail, as some directors, when they make one big bad movie, end up in, especially if you're a woman or a person of color.
Making a studio movie where you don't have full control.
Right. So it took her forever to kind of like get back on her feet and find her way back into the system, back into behind the director's chair. And one of those first ways back was this movie called The Invitation, which is tiny. It maybe cost like $4 or $5 million max. And it's mostly set in this house up in the Hollywood Hills, and you're following this couple as they drive up this garden path. They're going to this party that they don't want to be at. And very slowly you start to unravel that, like, the guy had been in a relationship with a woman throwing the party who had been gone for a while internationally, and then she's back, but she brought this other boyfriend who's super fucking weird, and like his girlfriend who's kind of on board because she doesn't understand the entire contours of all of these relationships. But it's a movie that is, I'm not going to spoil it because the end of this movie is fantastic. But you know how you're in a horror movie and you're always second guessing the characters, where you're like, if you had just left now, everything would have been fine. If you just picked up that knife and stabbed them in the head, dude, it'd all been good. This is a movie that anticipates every time you want a character to leave, and it gives you a compelling reason for that character to stay. So you're never in that sense of, it's straining my believability that these are human people responding to actual human stimuli. it leads you down that trail and lets you understand every reason why every character is doing everything, as smart or dumb or as daffy or as violent as they might ultimately be. And it's and when you get to the end of it and when it finally reveals itself as to what it is, it's wonderful because you've been down that road, because you've made every bad decision with these guys and with these ladies for the reasons why that it's fucking awesome.
Have you guys here seen it? The Invitation?
Two.
It's,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's still streaming
I think
somewhere.
it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
There's also, there's a movie to mention between Aeon Flux and The Invitation that Karin Kusama directed, and that's Jennifer's Body,
It's getting a lot of love.
Wow.
which was very maligned at the
Thanks.
time of release in 2009. Karin Kusama and
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox, who's one of the two stars of Jennifer's Body, recently did a really great Q&A and sort of reclamation screening, I would probably describe it as, at the Egyptian at Beyond Fest, and talked about what that process was like and what enduring that was like, and sort of how much misogyny we probably, most of us, never realized was thrown at them during the process of making and releasing that film. So I think that's also one that's worth
For sure.
revisiting.
But yeah, like The Invitation was, when we were in the room for the first season of Castle Rock, that was one of our kind of signals. Like, how do we put characters in uncomfortable, impossible situations in ways that make sense and feel logical, not just plot-wise, but emotionally? Because if you don't have that emotional context, then it's all just moves. It's all just, people are doing things because the script told them to do those things. But getting inside those characters and knowing why they do the things they do is kind of one of the things we took from that.
I feel like that one's kind of a cheat, though. Is it really horror?
Genre.
It's kind of like, I guess, thriller, suspense, maybe.
It's got jump scares. It gets gory.
I guess.
You know, I think
I'll give you a pass on that one.
Thank you. It's also my podcast.
And shout out to Jordan Cucciola from Vulture, who put together that screening at the Egyptian. And there's a great write-up of the conversation that she had with Karin and Jennifer. And Jennifer. Megan.
The one with the body.
The one with the body. But I'm really glad because I had to go to a bridal shower, so I didn't get to go. I had tickets and I couldn't go. So reading it was like really enlightening, and I'm really glad that Vulture ran it as a piece.
What's your second movie, Clarke?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We've gone around the horn.
All right. So this is the one that I took the most notes for because I wanted to make sure I got some stuff right. I, of course, want to get the other stuff right, too, but this one in particular. So there's a movie that came out in 1999 from director Antonia Bird called Ravenous. Has anybody seen Ravenous? Yeah. Okay, great. Here doing the Lord's work, trying to tell people about Ravenous, your favorite cannibal Wendigo movie. Okay, so...
Wendigo!
So, yes, that's right. So, okay, Ravenous is a very, very dark comedy and horror movie starring Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle. And I gotta say, by the way, I was rewatching this movie and I was like, hello, Robert Carlyle. I don't know why this was the one and not like the full Monty exactly,
All right.
but this was the one for me. It says something about my taste. But anyway, so I love this movie so much. And this was a movie that came out and was mismarketed and definitely, like, kind of, speaking of landed with a thud, like absolutely landed with a thud. Antonia Bird, who has since passed away, she actually was not the original director on this movie. The original director was fired 2 weeks into production. And it actually was Robert Carlyle, who was like, I've worked with her many, many times in the UK, and I think that you guys should hire her. And what came out of this was just like, I love this movie so much. It almost feels like Coen Brothers adjacent, like that very dark, grim, bloody, violent, very funny in a lot of ways, look at humanity. And so this also plays off of the Wendigo or Wendigo, however you choose to pronounce it, folklore that is prominent up in the Great Lakes of Canada and the US. And I wanted to tell you guys about this because, and this is the part that's really important, I think. So this creature in folklore possesses the human person, and they have to eat human flesh, and they cannot be sustained, and they almost like get superpowers. Yeah, eat up. That was a great time to take a bite of a tot, right? Are they tots? Are they fingers? What?
And they're hot.
I got this. It's okay.
Put some ketchup on it. But anyway, so it not only you cannot satiate this hunger, but you get stronger. Your senses get more sharp and all of that.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-Wendigo. Okay, so I wanted to bring this up though because dad jokes. Because I listened to this podcast and it's called Pleasing Terrors. And if you guys are into like genre, folklore, horror stories, ghost stories, but fact that is sort of built into this too, I cannot recommend it enough. But one of my favorite episodes is actually called Hungry Spirits. And they talk about this. And I told Marc this at dinner, and I just think it's such a cool fact. This is what a nerd I am. Okay, so the Wendigo myth and folklore has been sort of present in these cultures for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? But as time progressed, the evolution of this folklore progressed as well. And in the early 1900s, it became known as Wendigo psychosis, right? So it's a thing, it's a clinical thing that people recognize. And again, specific to the Great Lakes of Canada and the US. Okay, it's disappeared, you guys, meaning there is no known instance of Wendigo psychosis in living memory.
That we know of.
Well, but that's the thing, is that these reports aren't happening. People aren't being treated for it. And I find that so fascinating because it's what was in the water? What was happening to these human brains that was causing this that now just isn't there? It's so cool when you think about that. I'm so nerdy. This is I'm so sweaty right now.
There's some dude in Saskatchewan who's like, Wendigo?
Oh yeah, what? And then now we're talking about it and it's gonna Winnebago.
Are you saying you want to manifest the return of the Wendigo?
No, maybe.
Not at all.
No, I definitely don't. But anyway, this movie is great. Guy Pearce is amazing in it, and as is Robert, as is the whole supporting cast. And I do think that from the score to the tone to the humor to the action sequences, Antonia Bird directed the shit out of this movie, and I wish more people saw it.
Marc, have you seen it?
No.
Clarke, do you think Marc can handle it?
I do. I really, really
Okay.
do. I do.
I also love that you almost said direct the fuck out of it, and then you pivoted to shit.
I did.
I don't
know what's
I'm gonna
happened.
curse here, but I don't want to go
After
that far.
I excitedly geeked out over people eating each other, I know.
She made it PG-13.
I did. I tried
Nice.
to. The other thing is, we were talking about this earlier. Bad news, friends. This is a Fox 2000 movie. So if you're concerned about not being able to find things because the overlords are putting them in the vault, you just might want to buy it on Blu-ray. There was actually an awesome Blu-ray release that happened a few years ago, or get it while you can, because
I have a friend who just
might
said
be going away.
She added the DVD mailing feature back onto her Netflix for precisely this reason.
Yep.
That there are just movies that aren't streaming and may never be streaming, and there are still physical media.
Wait. That's an option?
That is an option.
Girl.
Did not
But
know
in the
that.
U.S., Ravenous is streaming on Hulu, and the Blu-ray is really good.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. Anyway,
Excellent. All right.
sorry for my spiel. I was
Jen,
really excited.
round 2. What you got?
I want
What-
to take it back to the 90s.
What's in the Rainbow Book?
Do you remember the 90s? Do you remember the year 1992?
That's what we call 90s?
No? Oh, you blacked it out of your memory. I don't blame you. A little movie called Pet Sematary 2. 2 specifically.
Ghost.
Wow, too.
Oh, Dose. Sorry, 2 is my preferred Pet Sematary.
Woo.
Both 1 and 2 are directed by the great Mary Lambert. But 2 is the one that starred Eddie Furlong, who had such a run in a very specific period. I'm talking pre that. I'm talking 92, 93, 94.
Man, the golden
Right?
days.
Wait, when
Especially
is
for genre,
Terminator?
especially for horror. Pet Cemetery 2.
Terminator 2?
Too, yeah.
But when is that? 1990?
92.
92.
Oh, okay. Damn. That's a long time
After
ago.
Pet Sematary 2, he did. Oh wait, the year before he did Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and then the year after he made the "Living on the Edge" music video by Aerosmith.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my Eddie Furlong crush was extreme at the time.
I sat right behind him at the Giant Silent Bob movie premiere. Oh. And like I didn't recognize him at first until he turned. It's like, John Connor, what's up? And he's like, hey man, I'm just fucking living the dream.
What brought him to that premiere?
Tuesday.
An invitation.
I'm not entirely sure. He may or may not have been in the movie. I can't say. Because I was waiting for my cameo, not his.
And then 1994 brought us Brain Scan.
And then what happened after that?
I'm
Eddie
not
Furlong?
quite sure what happened after that, but those few years were so rich
They really
in
were.
Eddie Furlongness.
In Pet Sematary 2, isn't Clancy Brown in that one? Yeah, I think I just watched this like a year ago for the first time. Yes. But I don't know if I finished it.
What?
I was in a hotel.
Let's watch that again. Put it on the list.
Put it
We're
on,
gonna watch
put it
these
on
all
our cat
together.
list.
Okay, I'm watching
Oh,
Ravenous.
cats. Is there a dead cat in this one too?
Oh, wow.
We could make
I
that
think so,
stretch.
right?
There's
Yeah.
gotta
It's
be.
in the first one, so.
Churchy.
I'm sensing a theme.
All right. Anyway,
My turn?
sorry.
Or
I think it's my turn.
Victoria's turn. Número dos, por favor.
Número dos. Okay. So it's a little movie called Midsummer.
Aha.
Or as I like to call it, Midsommar. I don't know why. The A just confuses me, so I just add the accent.
Midsommar.
Guys, I just saw this a few days ago. And I'm not recovered yet. Okay? I was so scared to watch it. First of all, I haven't seen Heredity, so because I was already too scared. And I gathered all my strength and I rented Midsummer, and my God, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I'll just say something horrific happens in the first act. That's kind of like before the story kind of begins, and you're led into this story by this young woman. The character's name is Dani, played by Florence Pugh, I think her name is, and who is phenomenal. Absolutely. I hadn't seen her before until I looked up her credits, and I'd seen her in this movie, Lady Macbeth, which came out a few years ago, and she was phenomenal in that. But so for whatever reason, this group of friends from college decides, oh yeah, let's go to this like festival in like some Nordic place. And guys, bad things happened. Bad things happened.
how many people here have seen Midsommar? Midsommar.
Oh my God, guys,
Ooh.
how are
You guys
you
know.
even still standing after having watched it? Oh my God, so horrible things. First of all, this is all I have to say. I was shocked that there were black people in this movie. I was like, no.
I'm shocked
like,
to hear that right now.
I was like, there was one black person, and for whatever reason, he was not listening to his ancestors, because he should have got the hell up out of there with a quickness. Because I'm just saying, like an hour into this movie, which is the other thing you need to know, it's kind of a slow-moving film, so it's very beautiful, it's very lush. Ari Aster is a great director, so he really sets the tone for the film. But like an hour into this movie, some shenanigans happened that I won't spoil. And I'm sorry, where are the cars? Because I would have been gone. And so the fact that the black man stayed after this happened, I was like, I'm not buying this. So that's my one
But
caveat.
hey, let's be thankful that he survived an hour into the movie.
Yes, this is true.
Traditionally-
This is true. He could have been gone in like the first 2 minutes, so you are
Sorry,
correct.
LeVar.
You're correct. LeVar.
It's over for you.
Yes, so it could have been that. But I mean, aside from the cinematography in this film is incredible. It's so beautiful. The places that they go are wonderful. You get a kind of psychedelic feel because there's a lot of drug taking in the
Mushrooms?
movie,
Mushroom
mushrooms, and I'm just like, what are y'all doing? You just arrived in this strange place and you're imbibing drugs? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't know. All my instincts were like on 11, so I was ready. I'm already just ready to run. So, and then, like I said, the shenanigans happen. People still stay. People start disappearing. People still stay. And I won't spoil the end, but holy Jesus. The ending is batshit crazy. And please watch it.
That was amazing.
Without spoiling it.
Yes, I'm trying not to spoil.
No spoilies.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I also think it's a great entry in relationship horror.
Yes, my God.
Subgenre.
The worst relationship.
A quick little thing. I don't get invited to any cool Hollywood things, and I did get invited to the small LA premiere of Midsummer.
Yeah.
Couldn't go because my boyfriend and I were breaking up.
Should have taken him.
And I know. And then I found out, oh, this is a breakup movie. Ah, that's even better. Like, I canceled I was like, sorry, can't make it. I'm sick. No. I was breaking up with my date. And then I saw the movie later and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
That's perfect. Okay.
Actually, I've already, since this year's Halloween is forever long,
Yeah.
and I've been to God knows how many parties already, and it's not even tomorrow. It's the day after tomorrow, officially. I've seen so many Midsummer costumes.
Oh yeah, because it's very beautiful.
And
that's
they all
the thing.
look
That's
glorious.
also why it's so scary. It's so pretty.
Glorious.
I won't say what it is, but the couple's costume version of that, oh, God. It's great.
Mark, did you see Midsummer?
He already told us.
I
I
forgot.
like every one of these. Like, did you see
forgot.
that? I'm gonna say no. 'Cause
I just
of
want
course
to
I
know,
didn't
like
see
a
it.
running. Is this too scary for
The running
Mark?
tally of shit I won't see. Yeah, that's on it.
Yeah.
I won't see it. No.
It's not as scary as I've heard Hereditary is. So I'm
I would
like,
agree
I
with
can't.
that.
And I'm a horror
Wow.
fan. I couldn't go. That was a bridge too far. So
Latoya, you're gonna see the extended director's cut of Midsummer.
it's already almost 2.5 hours.
It's so long.
No. Well, you should have put it in the beginning. I can't sit for the director's cut.
What is your ideal runtime?
Hour and a half.
95 minutes.
Yeah, hour and a half.
100 on a good day.
I was thinking about how we don't have enough or almost any kid horror anymore,
Are you afraid of the dark?
except for Are You Afraid of the Dark, Nickelodeon's reboot,
Whoop, which is
three-part
really good.
series. It is
really,
so good.
It's really good.
It's
It's
good.
really good. Highly recommend
I
you
like
guys.
it, yeah.
Nickelodeon brought it back.
Speaking of kid horror, it's not quite kid horror, but I'm calling an audible. My second was going to be Train to Busan.
Ooh, so
Great.
Which I love to
Train.
death. It's such a great movie, and I love that it is a zombie movie through and through. But the thing that makes it different is that it's shot through the cultural lens of South Korea
Yeah.
and what that society and how that society treats a thing like a zombie outbreak. It's fascinating, it's fucking scary, and it's gory, and I can live with it because zombies I can somewhat roll with in the way that fucking other things I can't. But I'm calling an audible because I
yes.
remember taking my son to, they did a re-release like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little older, of Ghostbusters. And I realized he didn't get any of the jokes because he was 12. And if you strip out all of the humor from Ghostbusters, it is a really effective supernatural horror movie. All of the fucking beats work. All of the ghost shits work. All of the jump scares work. Everything is eerie and spooky. And why is that lady hovering over there? What is this Keymaster shit? What are these rubber dogs doing? I don't know. It all seems awful. And he was petrified. And I had never reckoned with that movie in that way before. But it's the reason why it works is because at its core, if you're going to do a movie, a comedy version of an actual thing, it needs to be the good version of that thing first. Like Young Frankenstein works because it's actually a really strong Frankenstein movie that has jokes. So like all of the structure works, all of the horror works, all of those beats function as actual drama, and then there's jokes. And I was kind of blown away by that. Like I had never realized that before. The reason I love Ghostbusters is not because it's funny, which it is, and not because of the cast, which is amazing, though they are, but it is actually a really good supernatural movie in defiance of the rest of that stuff. And every other time you see a movie like that that doesn't do that work, like, say, the new Ghostbusters movie, which I have nothing
Shade.
against it, but it doesn't work as a supernatural horror film. It is just a comedy. And some of that comedy is funny, but it's not doing the thing you need that movie to do, which is deliver scares every 15 minutes until you pass out, and then scares every half an hour after that.
A lot of that too is Dan Aykroyd. Aykroyd's a huge supernatural enthusiast, ufologist. He's in it. He is in that shit.
You believe the apocalypse is coming because the movie is teaching you how that apocalypse is going to show up.
He really does, y'all.
Look, and it doesn't get any scarier than the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
No.
Just saying.
As shit.
That was brilliant. I thought it was great.
And that's the part that I think got my son the most, because he shows up oh, this is Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and then his face turns.
Yes, and then he turns
and
evil.
he was like, I don't like this at all, Dad.
Ghostbusters 2, when I was a kid, my parents took me to I think they thought I was too young to let any of it register. Oh, Vigo the Carpathian coming out of that wall, out of that painting. Nope, baby Clarke was not having that. Mom and Dad regretted that decision real fast.
That's a good point. Vigo remains one of the scariest
I love
childhood
him.
villains that I saw.
I actually like Ghostbusters too. I'm sorry. I know that's
I do too.
Yes, good movie.
I do too.
we've shifted public opinion then because
Well, it's a safe space. We can talk about some shit here.
all of our friends.
I have a question for you, Marc.
Yes.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Do I believe in ghosts? Yes.
Ooh.
Because I lived in an apartment in Queens that I'm positive was fucking haunted.
How do you know? What would happen?
Because I remember being in that apartment, and my then girlfriend hated it because she was convinced that the ghost didn't like her in the house. And so she'd be like, I got up, and this fuck's face staring back at me in the mirror. It's not my face. I was walking down, and suddenly there's
moving.
no wind, there's no windows blowing. Yeah, it's but I didn't see it. I was like, I think you're just paranoid.
I see one spoon move. I hear one noise upstairs. I am out.
Yeah.
No room for error.
I don't believe in ghosts in the religious sense because I'm a godless heathen, but I believe that energy needs a place to go, and sometimes said energy has blocks that stop it from going wherever it's supposed to go.
Totally.
So you're saying you believed your girlfriend at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't move, but I believed her. Because it wasn't bothering me.
Doesn't bother me, so I'm all set.
I treat ghosts the same way I treat spiders, which is listen, don't come in my space. If you stay in your side of it, we're all good.
We're good.
If you come here, then we have a problem. And so the ghost was never up in my grill, so it's hey man, you go haunt that shit. Do it. All right, so last, what's your
You want to start with me again?
We're going around the horn.
All right. Okay, so to continue my 2 out of 3 basic recommendations. Mine is 2013's The Conjuring. Now, this is yes, thank you.
Yep.
This is a franchise that you all have heard of, I'm sure, because we cannot escape nuns and Annabelles and all the things. It is taken over the world, and in a way, I think that's cool. But I do want to say that The Conjuring, I believe, is a horror masterpiece. The first movie. I mean, because it works on the simplest levels. It is a family melodrama. And so James Wan has ruined haunted house movies forever. Because The Conjuring actually, when a jump scare is what kicks something off, it actually kicks something off. It's shot like an action sequence, which is so awesome. When you watch that movie, there are no cheap jump scares. And I think that when especially this time of year, everybody writes an article about jump scares. Boo, we hate them, whatever. And that's totally fair when they don't lead to something, right? Because you're as an audience, Steven Spielberg talks about in Jaws, the head that pops up in Ben Gardner's boat, and he's they added that later, and usually, before they added that, the shark jumping out of the water onto the orca was the one where the audience would lose their shit. And when they added Ben Gardner's boat, Spielberg was like, what happened? They're not jumping when the shark jumps out of the water. And it's yeah, because you already got them. You build up that goodwill with the audience and you can use it once. And then once you get them, they're going to be suspicious of you for the rest of the movie. So I get why people are annoyed with jump scares, but The Conjuring, I just rewatched it again. Every every scare leads to another scare, leads to something that feels satisfying. And I remember I went and saw the movie Winchester because I had to.
Starring Helen Mirren.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, first of all, you have to say, Helen Mirren is a G.
She,
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Bow down
Dame
to the
Helen
greatness
Yes.
of Dame
the
Helen
goddess
Mirren.
that is Helen Mirren. But I say that because, actually I thought Winchester had a great premise. The execution was not great. But the point is, that was the moment where I realized that James Wan ruined everything forever because you can't do cheap anymore. Now audiences, they almost expect a little bit more. And frankly, it's kind of a reason why I'm a little disappointed in the overall Conjuring franchise because they didn't follow James. They learned all the wrong lessons from the first Conjuring movie. But anyway, ready for Conjuring 3, I'll be there. And the first one really, really, really is great. So if you're looking for something last thing, sorry. This is my time of year, you guys. I'm so excited.
My time is done.
But so the myth or the rumor, Conjuring's rated R, and the myth or the rumor, it was always we couldn't figure out why we got an R rating because there's nothing in this movie. There's no blood, there's no sex, there's no profanity, and that's actually true. I asked Peter Safran, one of the producers, is that just something y'all made up? And he was like, no, we thought we were making a PG-13 movie. We just kept going back to the MPAA. What can we cut? What can we do? And they're like, oh, nothing. It's too scary. And they're like, well, guess we're making an R-rated movie then. And now all of them have to be R. But the point is, if you have a friend who you're into horror and they want to watch something that's kind of scary, but that's actually good, I think Conjuring is a great gateway movie.
I agree. Is that your favorite haunted house movie?
That's a great question. Does Poltergeist count?
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay, I guess that counts.
I think-
when you were talking, all I kept thinking about was The Others.
Yes, I love The Others.
And I love that movie so much, and it is so well done. And I recently rewatched it, and it still holds up.
Yes.
It is still really, really on point.
I understand that reference.
Yay! You've seen The Others.
that is a great. I
and
love
it is
The
perfect.
Others.
It's a perfect film.
Agreed. It holds up. But anyway, The Conjuring, really check it out. The other ones are fine, but this one is something special.
All right.
End rant.
What you got, J-Dog? What's in the Book of
Let's
Wonders?
talk about vampires, you guys.
We haven't done vampires yet.
And by vampires, I mean the John Carpenter movie Vampires from 1998.
We got booed.
Were those booed? I'm sorry, who booed?
No, they were saying, boo. It's a scary podcast.
Good
Actually,
save.
I'm really curious. Guy who booed, why? Why boo?
It's
what's his face pulling off all leather?
James
Woods.
Woods.
Oh wow.
Leather Daddy James Woods.
He's
is
not
your
just
problem?
trying to kill vampires. He's very good at his job, okay? James
Doesn't
Wood.
the second one have John Bon Jovi in it?
There are two
That's number
sequels to vampires.
What? That is too many sequels to
Anyway.
vampires.
John Carpenter's more vampires.
Look, vampires is really fun. And it got me thinking, why were the mid to late 90s so obsessed with vampires?
Great question.
Sexy, because they're sexy.
Because
Hat, except for
Interview
James
with a
Woods.
Vampire, the book came out, and then the movie came out, and everybody's like,
And Brad Pitt was looking delicious.
motherfuckers seem to like these vampires.
But the 90s, the totally 90s vampire movies are not like Interview with a Vampire.
No.
They're what's that? So
Yeah, but
it's
then there's, the
Interview is
Near-Darks and-
period.
Wait,
There's
what's
Near-Darks that came
what's
earlier.
the one with Catherine Deneuve and Susan
The
Sarandon?
Hunger.
Boom.
The
Yes.
Hunger.
I need more
Bram
of that.
Stoker's. But also, I was thinking more along the lines of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that one.
And same year as John Carpenter's Vampires, Blade came out.
Yes.
You're
Good
right. Why were we into vampires?
I don't know, but I was thinking in terms of news, as you are wont to cover on this program.
Occasionally, that I will steal from the internet.
In the great Marvel versus Auteur Wars, what greater, common ground is there than Bram Stoker's Dracula meets Blade? Let's have a double feature, guys, and work it all out.
Or let's get
that's a
Francis
hard
Ford Coppola to direct Blade.
Or that. Okay, sure. Why not?
Oh no, I do not want to see that movie.
No?
I
You don't think he would handle either of those things well?
I don't.
You've never seen Cotton Club?
Oof.
He's really great with African Americans.
This is the horror episode. Are we going to talk about Jeepers Creepers? Nope,
I'm
we're
sorry.
not.
Did I make it about race? Apparently I made it about race.
Don't forget that one,
Duck and
Francis.
cover.
I just want more Vampire in Brooklyn love.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Eddie. Yes.
Can I tell you a story about that?
Yes.
I asked Angela Bassett about that because Wes had just passed. And she just was like, well, first of all, Angela Bassett is, she's just wonderful and beautiful and amazing and talented. But she had the most lovely, lovely, lovely things to say, because I think that notoriously that was a bit of a contentious set, because Wes wanted to make Wes wanted to make a comedy and Eddie wanted to make a scary movie, and they were not on board. But Angela Bassett said that she loved being with both of them, and that she loved working with Wes, and I thought that was really cool.
Angela Bassett wanted to get paid. Whatever movie you guys want to make, if we're rolling cameras, I'm showing up.
But she's so good. Anyway,
all right.
That's my story.
So, John Carpenter's Vampires. Have you extolled the virtues of said thing enough?
Wait, so
I'm just
should
saying.
we watch that or Blade?
Let's watch all of them.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Also, has anyone here seen Full Tilt Boogie? Yeah. The behind-the-scenes documentary that is one of my favorite filmmaking documentaries. That's from Dusk Till Dawn. But I wonder, as filmmakers, creatives, what do you guys most want to know from these movies of how they were made?
I love the Evil Dead 2. It's the how we got it done. It's the we're trying to do something interesting and new and different. We have no money, we have no time. It is nothing but ingenuity and spit and polish and gumption and fuck it, we can't have a Steadicam. How do we do this? Well, it turns out if we take a giant plank of wood and screw the camera to the middle and each of us hold it, it'll kind of steady it enough that it's not crazy. Oh shit, never would have thought of that. I love that story from the set of The Terminator where they're trying to do Arnold punching through the glass of the car. And they're like, listen, the only way for us to do this effectively is for us to put an actual pneumatic cannon in where his arm should be, and that is what's going to punch through. But we can't mount that on the car and then have Arnold there, and it's a safety thing. And some grip was like, what if we just move the bricks in the back of the car? It'll look like the car's moving. It's like, yes, that thing. It's the solving problems in ways when you don't have money to solve those problems.
Or CG to
or CG
throw
or
on
nothing.
there.
It's either in the script or it's just fuck it, we're Boy Scouts today. Let's make this shit up.
No, I do. I love knowing the behind the scenes of how people make things. But the thing that always interests me as someone who's always trying to come up with ideas is the inspiration. And so I really liked when Wes Craven talked about how he got the idea for Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was like, holy shit, this was inspired by some real things that happened where there were people who were complaining that they were having these nightmares, and they would find that they had a coffee pot hidden in their room, and they were trying to stay up for days on end, and then they would mysteriously die. And I was like, that's a great idea for a story, because you've always heard that sort of myth of if you die in your sleep, you're gonna die in real life. And so I just love stuff like that where you get to marry the thing that they found interesting, and that became the kernel of the idea of the film.
Do you have crazy dreams, movie dreams, that you turn into ideas?
Oh, all the time. That it happens, and I actually keep a journal next to my bed, and I write down the dreams, because sometimes I'm like, that I don't know how that's gonna become a story idea, but I'm just gonna record it, and that time when you're searching for ideas, you have a reservoir right there for you. Yeah.
I haven't remembered a dream in 20 years.
Oh my God, really?
Whoa, really?
I never remember my dreams.
That's okay.
I remember them all the time.
Same.
Some of them are scary. It's there's been times when I've had a like a sad dream and I've awakened myself crying. I've had scary dreams where I just wake up heart pounding, like, oh my God, thank God that was a dream. So I feel like it's really visceral things that are coming to you that are trying to inspire you and you can use them in your art.
Humanity sounds awful.
Humanity is beautiful.
Be a robot. It's so much easier.
You know why? We have movies to process. The scary movies help us process.
Yeah.
All right, Latoya, what's your last one? What you got?
My last one is a fun one, and it's interesting that we were talking about mixing comedy and horror, because my last recommendation for you, and I know you've all seen this, is Attack the Block, which was from a few years ago.
Believe, bruv.
It's so good. It is kind of a cheat because it's kind of more sci-fi, but it is horror, about an alien invasion that happens in this urban area, I think Brixton, in London. And it's the first time that I ever saw John Boyega, and I was absolutely blown away. He was like Will Smith mixed with Denzel Washington all in one. He was phenomenal. And the story, it was the first time that I'd really seen a horror movie where I felt like, that could happen to me. I could be in this movie. Like, yes, some fucking aliens come to my neighborhood, you all fight them off. Yes, that's my kind of movie. And so I think Joe Cornish directed it, and it was his first movie. And he did a really great thing, which was he tried to ground it in everything practical. And so there were like the puppets, the aliens were puppets instead of like being CG, and they really like ran down those hallways like really fast for all the action sequences. So he really tried to make a big high concept movie for a very small price. And I think that is a lost art nowadays. And it's a really great movie because of it.
And it's 89 minutes long.
Yes, perfect length. Perfect length.
Was there not recently a screening of it
There
in Los
was.
Angeles?
At the Alamo Draft House. They invited me to present a movie of my choice, and I chose Attack the Block.
Smart, man.
Many of the reasons that Latoya had
Yes.
mentioned. It is phenomenal, and it's always interesting to see the unlikeliest heroes be the ones who save the day. And there are a few more unlikely heroes than a bunch of street thugs from the UK.
Yeah,
living in the block.
And it's surprising too. One of my favorite scenes in the film is like towards the end, they have to sneak and they have to go back to Moses, John Boyega's house. And so they've robbed people and done all kinds of horrible bad shit. But you go to this kid's house and he has superhero sheets on his bed. He's still a kid. He's just a baby. And so you really get that. It's just a small moment where he's really humanized. He's more than just the thug that he was at the beginning.
The phone. She's like, how old are you?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm 15. It's like,
exactly.
15.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. All right. For my last choice, for my third and final, I am choosing a film that seemed like it came out 15 years ago, but it turns out was like just fucking February. Jordan Peele's Us.
Yes.
Or to be more precise, half of Jordan Peele's Us. Jordan Peele's Us begins as this sort of like it's a portrait into this family. They're going on vacation, and everything feels weighted and leaded with dread. Like every moment of that movie is just dripping with something is going to happen. Like Jordan Peele, he is so in control of his craft that he understands how to build tension out of what seems like it's going to be normal. He understands how to make you think that a monster or whatever bad shit is going to happen to this family at any moment. And when it does, it's harrowing. And if you haven't seen the movie or the trailers for the movie, this family of four, Lupita, fucking giant thighs, Winston Duke. It's like candy thighs, Winston Duke.
Candy thighs.
There was a dude in the last room that I was in who I don't know if he was gay before he saw Black Panther, but then he was like, when he's just sitting there and he's fucking like his legs are straddled and he's like, we are vegetarians. He's like, I think it moved, so I'm gay now. But like they're the parents and they've got these two kids, and what happens is it's a home invasion. And the people who are invading this home are weird-ass doppelgangers of those people. And it's frightening as shit. Like the home invasion itself is incredibly well done, and the idea that you're being hunted by yourself and a self that is not from this world but someplace else. Is it the self, especially when you're dealing with African Americans who have achieved some semblance of success in the world? There's always a version of yourself you had to leave behind to achieve that. There's always some element of, here's where I grew up, here's the family I used to have, here's the cousins I used to play with, whatever that is. There's the you have to, or the myth that you have to transcend that in order to become a success. Who are we leaving behind when we do that? And there's a version of that movie that's what it's about. It is about being invaded by the version of yourself you have to leave behind. And then the movie goes to another house. And in that other house, Elizabeth Moss and her husband and their shitty-ass kids are in there, also being hunted by doppelgangers of themselves. And you're like, but why? Like, why does it need to be bigger than this? Why can't it just be a home invasion by yourself? And then it becomes this weird government conspiracy thing, and there's rabbits and Hands Across America, and like we're at an amusement park, and it loses the thread of what made it so captivating in the beginning, which is, who are these people? What did they give up to be where they are? And is their past coming back to haunt them in ways that are awful and wonderful and just candy-coated dread? And it seems as if, and I was talking to Clarke about this before, that Jordan, he reminds me a bit of M. Night Shyamalan, in that M. Night Shyamalan can conjure mood like nobody's business. But he is so hell-bent on having a twist ending that sometimes he just forgets to tell a story. He is so actively interested in, well, this is what it really is, when what it was better. You know, like, I like The Village up until it's not The Village anymore. Like,
those are fighting words. I like The Village. Ooh.
It's like, it's a
you
really
want to throw down with me
effective
right now.
Until it's like, what? I'm in like modern-day Pennsylvania.
Spoilies.
If you haven't seen it, you're never going to see it.
I know. I'm kidding.
Like, what's killing these people? The trees, yo. Like,
No.
Why do you hate twists, Marc?
Yeah, why do you hate great twists? Movies?
Yeah. Are those the great twists that I'm hating on? Those?
There's another one, but
You guys, it's the trees.
For the record, I do heart on M. Night Shyamalan, so I love you. I love you, M. Night Shyamalan.
I love you, M. Night Shyamalan.
I love you just the way you are.
So Us, for me, started as an amazing look, and at this family and the things that they had to go through to get where they are. It was the very essence of what he talks about as social horror, and then it just becomes like big for big's sake, and it loses me a bit.
Well, one of the things that we'll keep it on the positive. One of the things that I loved about this movie was the inspiration. I don't know, I'm a big Twilight Zone fan, and there's an episode called Mirror Image that was the inspiration for the film, which I thought that's probably the most terrifying thing that I've seen. So please watch that episode.
which is
if
on
you haven't.
Netflix.
Yes, which is on
Yeah.
Netflix, which I highly recommend watching. And the other thing I'll say about this film is Lupita Nyong'o was acting her face off. Like, she killed this role, and I'm gonna be really mad if she doesn't get nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, like, similarly, there's a new Twilight Zone episode called Shatter Day, which follows Bruce Willis, back when he was a young and hungry actor, as a guy who slowly discovers that there's another version of himself that's stealing his life out from under him. And so he's just trying to live his life, but the other version is better at it, and like steals his job and steals his wife and steals his house and steals everything, leaving like prime Bruce Willis depressed and furious and murderous, trying to kill the newest version of himself, who I don't quite remember the twist, so I'm not going to spoil it because I can't, but I'm going to assume that he gets arrested for like attempted murder and ends up in jail because the new him had him arrested for trying to take over the old him's life. If that's not it, it should be.
It's like a bummer multiplicity.
Totally. So
Like
yeah,
very
and
midlife crisis horror.
So the thing about Us that both excited me and made me a little bit sad by the end of it is that Jordan Peele is so very good at this. And much like I think M. Night needs to do, much as I think Spike Lee figured out he needed to do as well, was hire a writer. Like, find somebody else to come in and like just work this shit through. Have somebody you can ask questions to and can respond to you with honesty and be like...
Latoya's face behind you.
It's because I don't disagree. It was this, I like the big swing of it all, right? And it wasn't until we got down, well, hopefully you've seen it, so no spoilers, but once we went to that place in the third act where I was like, oh wow, like there's a lot of exposition happening to make this understood for the audience. And I was like, you're right, we didn't necessarily have to go there, but I was also like, I like that you tried, you know?
Did you see the big reveal coming without saying what it is? Like, did you see it coming?
Yes, and that's why I thought it was going to be something else,
Yeah.
but then...
I was really surprised and at that choice because I was like, Jordan is a cinephile.
Yeah.
Nobody knows movies and genre like Jordan knows. And to telegraph it in such a way, which is fine. Like if you get to that place and then it's like, it's not about the surprise, it's about whatever else.
Right.
Totally cool, like sign me up. But the movie felt like it needed, or it was saying, gotcha. And then I was like, but no, we knew this.
Right.
Like, what?
I know. I was like, it has to be something else.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I liked it. I enjoyed
come
it.
down with a controversial
And
opinion.
I liked that it started a conversation, right? When I was leaving the theater, when I saw it, everyone was like, wait, what did that mean? And what were the rabbits? And yeah.
I think it's interesting to create a mythology within the world of this one movie where not everything is explained, but he dangles maybe the possibility of there being some explanation. It's just over there, and we'll get to it someday, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like he did try to explain, and it was not great,
But
Bob.
That's
to your
part of the
point,
problem.
Yeah.
oh, so to your point about Lupita, she's so good.
She's so
And
phenomenal.
to your point earlier, when you were introducing this film, this feels like it came out so long ago. It was this year.
It's this year, guys.
8 months ago.
Which is a shame to me because we're in award season now.
Yeah.
And literally this week, everyone's raving about like Little Women or whatever. And there's no way that Saoirse Ronan does half of what Lupita was doing in Us. But, you know, like I hope to see her name come up.
Look, this
Nothing against Saoirse Ronan. I love her. I'm sure she's great.
No,
Little
she's
Women.
great, but I'm like, I need a Kathy Bates moment to happen.
Yes.
I feel like horror films get so like disrespected.
Please.
And she needs to get an award nomination at the least.
Please
you know?
bring us all back for that episode of this podcast because I have things to say about genre and acclaim and awards. Like it is, I have things
Hereditary.
to say. So many things. Like Lupita, okay, anyway, different podcast. Sorry.
So I don't know how we manifest at least getting Lupita back in the Oscar conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get Lupita in
that'd
the
be
bar
cool.
and tell us some shit. Okay, that is the end of our horror discussion. Thank you so much for playing with everybody up here. And so now we're going to move on to Q&A, where you can ask any/all of us whatever fucking questions you want. We are going to be giving away 2 tickets to the 40X theater that is nearest you. This is movies for people who don't like going outside but want to feel things.
Wait, Mark, can you just describe the image on these tickets?
Well, it's like
What is
a
that?
couple
Are
sitting.
they naked?
No, they're flesh-colored shit.
Oh, it's flesh
yeah,
colored.
it's
Okay.
like
I
don't
think
get
you
to
got
have-
the right idea, Jen. I
Yeah.
think that's what that
Like,
image
what
is
is
trying
this?
to
And if they
evoke.
40X porn, then that's what happens.
Well, that's 40XXX.
Fourth.
I've literally no
told
idea
you.
what 40X is. in
That's
this
my
context.
win. That's your
Well
version
done.
of the win.
What is it? It's like, is it where the chairs shake?
That is not just where the chairs shake. The chairs are keyed to the
And
movement.
there's wind.
Smell.
And
Yeah, there's
so like
lots of
if you're watching Star Wars and the crawl is going over your head.
Oh, yeah, okay.
the
Yeah, I
seat
do know
starts
what
to
that
tilt
is.
back. And if there's
Yeah.
wind over there, there's wind and there's rain and there's like
That's
this
cool.
smell of screeching tires and gunpowder and it's sensory overload. Like if you live in a bubble, you're like, what does the world feel like?
I was just kidding
Go
earlier.
see
I
it.
know what that is. It's just that the image it looks like
It looks like sexy times.
very suggestive.
It looks like
so if you win this, you're very
vampires.
lucky.
Like vampires. So yes, thanks to Brett Deacon and the good folks at 40X, we have those tickets. We also have a signed poster, maybe the best of these posters.
It
that
is
have
so
been done.
It's so good.
Like it's really good.
Thanks to Nate Gonzalez over there. This is going in my house, not
Can we
this
shout
one.
out your social media?
The Dark Nate Returns, and this is signed by all of us who were up here today. So we're giving that away. And I brought a couple of Castle Rocks from
Yes.
from
what
my
is that?
from my
Yeah.
private stash.
Nice.
But yes, and I will sign those if you want them signed, or I'll just give it to you if you want to put it on eBay. I don't give a fuck. I won't be hurt. So yes, if anybody's got questions, by all means, Man JC will be taking Jen's mic.
Jen, I'll share.
The wireless.
Oh, you got another one. Look at that, dude.
Oh, fancy.
Also, you get some tots.
Bonus cold tots.
Bonus tots.
I'm stealing one.
Check. See if we can do this without feeding
Oh,
back.
are these just for me, or you want me to give those away?
Hi, Lowell. I know Lowell.
Oh, hi, Clarke.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Great. Yeah, great to see you. Great panel. Great podcast so far. I'm definitely going to try to watch these movies tomorrow.
Yay.
All of
and
them.
Halloween. Yes, all of them. Halloween and chill. So my question, I love animated movies, and there is a stigma that animation is just for kids. But there's a lot of animated movies that are really horrifying. I don't have to list them. I think everybody... Yes, exactly. So my question is, it's two questions. One, what is an animated movie that scared you the most as a kid, and do you think we'll ever get an R-rated animated horror movie?
Great question.
Animated movie that scared me the most as a kid. The Black Cauldron was a little fucked up.
Mine is also a Disney.
Yeah, but I think I would go Coraline. Because it's another one of those. I was showing it to my kids, and oh dear God, it's about like a little girl who is like estranged from her mother, who meets another mother who wants to sew buttons into her eyes.
Doppelgangers, anyone?
And like that is a horrifying thought if you're a child who's lost. And like, all I want is my mom. I found my mom. She wants to do awful fucking things to me in order for me to stay, but she's my mom, so maybe I will. But I don't like it twists all of those things that you want to be able to trust as a child. And it is done with such care and joy and wonder. Yeah, and I think there's, at this point, like a handful of people still doing stop motion animation, and Leica is killing it. I want more Aardman, that's just me. Like, Curse of the Were-Rabbit is also pretty great. But yeah, I go Coraline.
The one that scared me as a kid was Sleeping Beauty. Maleficent scared the shit out of me. Her eyes glowing in the fireplace, like what? No, I was a scared kid. That scared me. But Coraline, Paranorman, and Monster House, I think, is like the trifecta of scare. But it's interesting. Hector Navarro, who is a person that I do DC Daily with, and who also I just love in general, is the biggest advocate for animation that you will meet, and basically saying animation is a medium, not a genre, and I love that. And so it's interesting because when you think about Coraline or Paranorman or Monster House, these are movies that are, quote fingers, geared for children, maybe because they star children, right, in the animation, or they follow children as their main characters. But they're dealing with really serious, mature, real things. And I think that what we saw, like for instance, to use Stranger Things as an example, in terms of like, oh, you can't have a TV show that follows kids, it's not a kid's show, right? Well, Stranger Things just went, yeah, or you can. It said, oh, or you can, and it's scary, and it's used to be it's the second biggest R-rated movie of all time. So my point is, I think what it will take is an advocate who has money to make a more adult themed or serious animated film that is actually scary. But if Black Cauldron or Sleeping Beauty is any indication, the tools have been there for 60 years. So that's what I think.
The first thing that I thought of was also stop motion. I thought of Tales from the Hood, which was absolutely terrifying, which I highly recommend. And if people also haven't seen this great documentary called Horror Noir.
Oh my God. Yes.
Executive produced by Tananarive. It's a really great documentary about the history of black horror, and it's wonderful.
Streaming on Shudder.
Yes, streaming on Shudder. I love all these plugs. But the real answer is Pinocchio, because oh my God, when they were on that island, they turned into donkeys. I feel like Disney has traumatized a lot of people.
I have a couple of And I guess it would be considered adult animated movies that I remember watching as a kid. That weren't necessarily horror, but I love them, and they were definitely too grown up for me at the time. Cool World, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which but there's some scary things in Who Framed Roger
Judge
Rabbit.
Doom was scary.
Yeah,
Oh, the
so
dip.
scary.
The dip. Okay, maybe. Yeah.
And okay, this isn't scary, but I want to shout it out. Baby's Kids, I watched an awful lot as a kid. And then in terms of an animated movie that scared me as a child, like legit scared me, like the images horrified me. I was like, for years, Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings from 1978, which is also beautiful, but it's very haunting in a way that I never found the live action movie.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. And I think there are a handful, if not like basketful, if not truckful, of Japanese animated films that are just frightening as fuck. Like, Death Note, even Attack on Titan is super weird and gory and awful and like, oh, flesh monsters walking around, eating people. That's for kids. But yeah. I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Come and get some shit.
Lowell.
Yeah,
Come
good
get it
question.
taught.
Thank you.
And one of these.
Yes,
Your bonus
thank
thing.
Ooh, so many prizes.
So many prizes. Where we going, JC? Hi.
Hey,
Oh,
I
What's
like
your name,
this-
Camper?
I like this
I'm Marc.
spotlight.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
How are you?
Rat name
How do you spell it?
with a K.
Dead to me.
I
What's your question, Mark?
Hey, is Event Horizon horror? And
Yeah.
if not, why am I scared of it so much? Oh my god. And what do you think about science fiction and horror?
Love it.
I love this
So
question.
Two great tastes that taste great together.
Yes.
Peanut butter and chocolate, they go together.
It's like flies to honey.
Yeah.
I used to do a
Like
show.
flies in honey.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I used to do a show
Wait.
called Collider Nightmares. It was on the Collider channel, and it was thanks, Lil. But I bring it up because I called it Nightmares specifically because I didn't want to call it Collider Horror Talk. I didn't want to call it like the weird genre parameters we put around things. I think whatever gives you nightmares counts as horror. And so I actually feel very strongly about this question because, but I do think that at the core of it is like this stigma of what horror is. And I think a lot of people, when they think horror, they go, oh, I don't like horror because I don't like torture porn. I don't like horror because I don't like slasher movies. So I don't like horror movies.
So is horror a genre or a medium?
Genre.
I think it's a genre. But yeah, I mean that's my 2 cents. Is like what if Event Horizon makes you scared, then it's horror. Like Rosemary's Baby scares the shit out of me. But a lot of people I've talked to, when I was putting together a horror list with somebody, the consensus was, I don't think it's really very scary. And it's like, okay, well, what scares you is different than what scares me, is different than what scares someone. You know what I mean? So anyway, I do think there are some common horror themes and things, but yeah, I think if Event Horizon gives you nightmares, then it counts.
I think if people are being killed off or going crazy on a spaceship, that's horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think The Fly is both horror and science fiction. Like it doesn't exist without the science fiction part of it, because unless it's fucking magic, but it's not magic. It's about science. It's about trying to do one thing, and here's the unintended side effect, and that is awful.
Yeah, all the Alien movies as well. Like
the
they're
first
horror
one, for
movies
sure.
to me.
I was ate sick at home and tuned into Alien on broadcast.
So good.
It was right when it was going, we've got to go on. We simply must go on. We've come
It's
this
a haunted
far."
house movie. Like that was always the design. Was
Yep.
Alien was going to be a haunted house movie in space. I think The Terminator is a horror movie.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That is also science fiction. That is also a romance.
Yeah.
But he absolutely will not stop ever until you're dead, is what you say about any other fucking slasher.
It's
that's
Michael
ever been.
Myers, it's Bruce the Shark, it's
Totally.
I mean, he's a serial killer. He's literally going like, "Oh, you're Sarah Connor. Oh, you're Sarah
Yeah.
Connor."
They even
Oh.
say that in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, we got a fucking copycat serial killer,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, It
It's
is.
like every bully who's ever had a bad obsession for the nerd, and like you can't stop the guy and he won't stop.
Yeah.
I think science fiction may be the most malleable genre in that it mates very well with lots of different things.
How? Oh yes, sorry.
In that, there's movies like Terminator, which is science fiction horror. There's straight up like fantasy science fiction, which is Star Wars. There is romance science fiction, Somewhere in Time or Charlie.
Oh, Somewhere in Time. Oh my God. So
Everything with time travel is suddenly science fiction, and also everything else that it is. So it's like Back to the Future is a science fiction comedy about parenthood and like finding love and all that shit. Like it is the on-ramp to your story, and if that thing involves fake-ass science, then suddenly it's science fiction.
Space Buddies, science fiction.
Space Buddies, Transformers.
Well, here's the thing. Terminator Dark Fate, I don't think is horror, right?
I would agree with that.
Which I think happens a lot in franchises when sequels go on and on and on.
It's just a roller
Right.
coaster.
In the same way that Aliens is not horror, it has one of the great jump scares in all of movies, but it's a war movie. And by design, like James Cameron will say, no, I made a war picture that happened to be like that one was a horror movie, this is a war movie, the next one is a whatever the fuck that is, prison movie.
I'm asking too many questions, but did you ever see Prince of Darkness?
Oh yeah,
That's a weird one.
it is a weird
It's a
movie.
little bit of a weird
Agreed.
one.
Time travel.
I also feel like this is a really good
Horror.
opportunity to plug Memory, the origins of Alien, which I am in, which is available. It's a great documentary about Alien, and you should watch it. It's available on VOD.
I also think this is a great opportunity to plug your shirt, Clarke. What does
Oh
it
my
say? What is the shirt
gosh.
you're wearing?
It says a Deborah Hill production, everyone, and in
Like
Halloween.
it says at the beginning of Halloween.
It is Tease on Scene. These they highlight female directors and producers and artists, and R.I.P. Deborah Hill. She was a cool lady.
She was great.
And she's responsible for a lot of your favorite things. So
Yep.
Thank you for your question, Mark. Did we answer your question?
Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Wait,
Have some shit, Mark.
has Terminator Dark Fate already come out? No.
Friday.
Not yet.
Friday. Okay.
Have you seen it?
Bet I've seen it.
That's all
I
you.
stand anything Sarah Connor, so I'm there.
You made off
Yeah.
very well.
Linda Hamilton is a national treasure.
Listen.
Oh yes.
No one holds a shotgun like that woman.
She is also super cool. I have had the pleasure. Have you interviewed her this week?
2 days ago, she
Oh,
gave me a
what?
hug.
Oh,
Actually, she gave me
nice.
several. She's a hugger.
She's a hugger, and she
Linda
is
Hamilton's
little
a hugger, you
smooches.
guys.
She's the coolest.
I love that.
The
She's
mother of the
cool,
future
lady.
is
She's also
funny.
a twin, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is how they did most of
Yep.
the effects shit in Terminator 2
Yep.
of like her in the other mirror and her walking up on herself with a shotgun. She's got a twin.
Yep.
Yeah. The
This
cheapest
is what
special
we're
effect
here for,
ever.
to drop these pearls of knowledge.
Just Susan of. Hey man, what's your name?
Hey, I'm Danny.
What was it?
Danny?
Danny.
Yep.
Danny. Okay. What can we do you for, Danny?
My question is, if you could take the comic book world and the horror world and have them have a crossover, what would it be? And can I go first? Because I have a really good idea.
Please
Hilarious.
do. So while we dial into this, what's your idea?
Punisher versus Chud.
Okay.
I could see them exist.
I mean, you know,
that makes
could
sense.
be a storyline where he's fighting underworld, and he ends up in the sewers, and there's a bunch of cannibalistic
So you're-
humanoid underground dwellers.
You're talking like specifically like a versus situation.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, yeah, I mean, Frank Castle's in that world or in someone else's world too. So
Okay,
Or
I got
take
one.
Versus, but a cross.
They could be
crossover.
friends.
Yeah, a crossover.
Okay.
I got one. A Nightmare on Graymalkin Lane, where Freddy Krueger is haunting, infesting, fucking with Charles Xavier. And so what happens when the most powerful telepath in the world can't go to sleep? And what happens when everybody else has to share that dude's dreams? And as fucked up as his brain is, and now that it's Charles Xavier murder brain is kind of what I'm looking for.
Wow. that's
I can't
good.
top that. So
good.
boom, mic dropped.
What everyone else got?
All right, I got one.
Okay, you
It's
go.
actually based on a real thing, and I Googled it. I wasn't just texting.
Look at y'all
okay?
cheating, looking stuff up on Google.
I know, I looked it up. I actually read this last year because it came out last year. It's called Wonder Woman and the Justice League Dark, The Witching Hour. Has anyone in this room read it? That's okay, read it. So basically, Hecate, the goddess or witch du jour from history and all sorts of mythology, they're really good. Infiltrates Diana, and she's apparently been there forever. And she infiltrates her and the Amazons. It's an awesome Justice League Dark crossover. When I read this, I was like, first of all, I was rabid for it. Like, I wanted every issue immediately, but also the visuals and seeing what happens, and it's all about witches and monsters and demons, and it is badass, and it is so cool. And you get to see evil Diana, which I'm like, yes. So anyway, that's it. Witching Hour, it came out in 2018. If you are interested in this, really pick up this run. It is super, super cool.
Sweet.
I want to see it on the big screen.
What you got?
I don't got anything good. You guys are too good at this game. I'll be honest, since this doesn't leave this room.
No, it's just us. Just us kids.
I was just picturing Howard the Duck in a lot of horror movies, and I couldn't figure out which one I want him in.
Howard the Duck destroys the universe. Yep. That would be kind of cool.
Oh God! No, look, your answer was way better. I can't. I didn't Google. I'm not gonna cheat. I'm not gonna be like certain people on this panel. I'll just say, look, we can just do any crossover of any version of Storm from the X-Men in any kind of vampire lesbian situation. I'm there for it. Boom. That's all.
I didn't know I wanted that, but now I'm there for it also.
There you go. That's what I'm here for.
Excellent.
The Hunger, but
there
with
you go.
Storm.
The Hunger, but with Storm. Come on.
I'm on board with that.
Yes.
I mean, take my money right
Storm
now.
versus Firestarter.
Oh yeah, Storm versus Firestarter. That would be awesome.
Water v Fire
Versus Captain Planet.
Or how about
Final countdown.
Seriously, what is scarier than climate change?
Climate change.
Storm fights these awful fires. That's pretty scary to me.
Fucking A, Dan.
John Cheadle's Captain Planet.
Ghost Rider and Hellraiser would be cool.
Yes.
Ghost Rider Hellraiser would be fun. Ghost Rider Storm would be fun.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah.
See?
But I needed you. I just bounced off of you.
We just need Storm and a bunch
there
of
you go.
shit.
Storm is
where she's
the unsung
wet
hero.
a lot, and there's rain,
Yeah.
and then there's another lady who's a little evil, and they're like, I could fight you, or
I think you guys should take a meeting with Marvel TV.
yes, pretty much. Hey, Kevin Feige, here's my pitch, or.
Look, if we're not going to be able to watch any movies from Fox or Disney ever again, at least let us get some Storm action in there,
Yes.
a solo Storm movie.
Yes, I need
Make it
it.
worth it for us, right?
Yes, full Storm frontal.
All right, well, you said it, not me.
And on that note, thank you for your questions, sir. Come get your shit. Don't run away. Thank you. Totally.
And since I drew this and you're a Freddy fan,
Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
Don't tell Nate. He's gonna be like, don't fucking bring your posters to my show.
I love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is all the show we have for you tonight. Did you have a
That's
good time?
You guys were awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for coming out on crazy busy Halloween week when I know there's apples you could be bobbing for or razors you could be putting in apples. What?
I have to shout out the Angry Asian Man shirt. Stay angry, girl.
Thank you so much to my co-hosts for coming out again on what is the busiest week of the year, especially for some of them. Jen Yamato, Clarke Wolfe,
Thank you.
Latoya Morgan. Find them all on the internet.
Thanks, guys.
They're all off somewhere doing awesome fucking shit. And thank you. This has been another episode of Black Man Beyond. I am Marc Bernardin. Come back next week, same black time, same black channel, smodcast.com or youtube.com/Kevin Smith. Night, everybody.